Where do you stand on the issue of whether football should be played collegiately this fall, Dr. Hainline?
So Rich, I stand in the same place as the advisory panel that we put together and actually three other medical groups, which include the Power 5 or Autonomy 5 medical advisory panel. We didn't weigh in and say play or don't play fall sports. We said these are the rigid conditions under which they must be played. And we actually included 5 reasons not to play fall sports. And so the Big Ten and then separately the Pac-12, they looked at all of that and they made their own independent decision that they didn't think they could meet those criteria. And the SEC, ACC, and Big 12, they postponed making a decision. And they said, maybe something will shift and we can meet those criteria. So that's where we are. It wasn't an NCAA top-down decision. It was an NCAA saying, these are the absolute conditions, and these are conference decisions.
Well, I guess part of the concerns of those who are petitioning the Big Ten and Justin Fields to play, and parents of Michigan, just to name just a couple of entities and people that want to play, is that when you say conditions and the conversation that you have put together, or at least the science that you put together, of not to play, that it seems to be not very well known. So what are those conditions that are out there that the Big Ten heard and the Pac-12 heard and decided to move on from football and fall sports right now?
Well, so there are a few things. One is that there has to be a testing program in place, and the minimum amount of time to get a test back, it has to be 3 days or less. And frankly, in most parts of the country right now, it's taking 7 to 10 days to get a test result back. So that in and of itself is a national disaster and shouldn't be the case. The other is that you have to be able to look at where you are locally in terms of your hospital infrastructure. That's one other example. And if they're at a situation where they are close to imploding or are very filled, that's a reason not to be able to proceed. Another is that you have to have the ability to do absolutely good contact tracing. And in the majority of this country right now, we aren't even close to being able to do contact tracing. We can barely even find out, the 2 close contacts, let alone the 10 close contacts. And then another is you have to be able to be certain that you can fairly isolate and quarantine all individuals that have to be in that situation. And your infection rate has to be at a place that the local public health officials say, yeah, this infection rate is acceptable. And what's interesting in our country is that we don't have any national guidance. That's making it quite difficult. And in some parts of the country, the local health officials say, look, this infection rate is not acceptable. We can't be doing much of anything. And in other parts, they have a different interpretation. So, with a new pandemic, a new disease, you have people looking at the same science, but they interpret it somewhat differently. And that's actually been the case when we look at a lot of disease states in our country. It's not just the black and white, the scientists say this, it's also how we interpret what the scientists are saying.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.